Your bank account exists on the ocean floor. Every dollar in your portfolio, every stock you own, every payment you make, all traveling through glass cables thinner than your thumb, lying unprotected on the seabed. In February 2023, 4 of those cables were severed in the Red Sea. 25% of Europe-Asia internet traffic vanished. High-frequency trading algorithms misfired. Bank transfers failed. Payment systems froze. Markets didn't crash. They just couldn't function. Because modern finance doesn't live in buildings or computers. It lives in cables. And those cables are breaking. Right now, an old woman in Georgia proved this in 2011, digging for scrap copper, accidentally cut a cable. Armenia lost 75% of its internet. For hours. 1 shovel. 1 cable. Near total financial blackout. ATMs stopped working. Credit cards declined. Wire transfers disappeared. Not because banks failed. Because the physical wire connecting Armenia to the world was severed. That's how fragile your money actually is. Not secured in vaults. Transmitted through glass on the ocean floor. Unguarded. Undefended. Carrying trillions in daily transactions. Through the same choke points that controlled empires for centuries. In February 2023, missiles hit the Red Sea. Houthi forces targeting ships, explosions, evasive maneuvers, anchors dragging across the seabed. 4 undersea cables severed, not deliberately, collateral damage. But the effect was immediate and total. Internet traffic between Europe and Asia dropped 25%, instantly. Every bank transfer between London and Singapore. Every stock trade between Frankfurt and Mumbai. Every payment clearing between Paris and Hong Kong. All routing through longer, slower paths, or failing completely. High-frequency trading algorithms built for millisecond precision started breaking. Orders misfiring. Trades executing at wrong prices. Liquidity evaporating in markets that depend on speed. Banks reported transaction delays. Some payments took hours instead of seconds. Others didn't arrive at all. This wasn't a cyber attack. This was physical infrastructure being destroyed by conventional weapons. And the financial system had no backup plan. Those 4 cables carried 17% of global internet traffic. 17%. Gone. Not temporarily disrupted. Physically severed. Repair ships can't operate in war zones. Cables stayed broken for months. During that time, every company doing business across continents paid more. Slower connections, higher latency, reduced capacity. The cost wasn't measured in downtime, it was measured in friction. And friction in finance is profit loss. If you're managing money across borders or trading in global markets, this isn't distant risk. This is your infrastructure failing in real time. And it's getting worse. The numbers reveal the dependency. A single transatlantic cable carries 300 terabits per second. Millions of simultaneous transactions. Every credit card swipe in Europe clearing through US banks. Every stock trade between New York and London. Every cryptocurrency exchange, all compressed into glass fiber the width of your arm. When that fiber breaks, none of it works. Not slowly, instantly. Payment systems are the first casualties. When cables fail, verification times spike. A credit card transaction that takes 2 seconds now takes 30. Or times out. Cross-border wire transfers freeze. Banks can't confirm balances. Letters of credit can't be verified. International trade grinds down. Companies with just-in-time supply chains can't confirm shipments. Orders cancel. Contracts breach. The machinery of global commerce runs on instant data. Break that, and the system seizes. Now trace how we got here. The first transatlantic telegraph cable was laid in 1858. It connected New York and London. Messages that took weeks by ship now took minutes. Markets changed overnight. Price information that was days old became hours old, then minutes old. Information asymmetry collapsed. The cable didn't just speed up communication, it created a new kind of market, one that assumed instant information. That assumption never went away. By the late 1800s, Britain controlled most undersea cables. Deliberate strategy. London was the hub. Cables radiated to India, Australia, Africa, every colony, every trade route. British companies laid them. British ships protected them. This wasn't about telegraphy. It was about information dominance. Knowing commodity prices before competitors. Hearing about events before markets. Controlling information speed meant controlling profit from information. Sterling's dominance wasn't accidental. It was infrastructural. When you control the cables, you control financial communication. When you control communication, you control settlement. When you control settlement, your currency wins. London didn't become the world's financial center because of better banking. It became the center because it sat at the center of the cable network. Geography wasn't destiny, infrastructure was. Fast forward to the 1950s. Telephone cables replaced telegraph, thicker, higher capacity. Governments funded them. Telecom monopolies operated them. Routes followed Cold War alliances. US. And Britain across the Atlantic. Russia building separate networks. Japan connecting to allies. Cables became geopolitical assets, not neutral infrastructure, strategic weapons. The difference between telegraph and telephone wasn't technology. It was bandwidth. More data flowing meant more financial coordination. More coordination meant more market integration. More integration meant more systemic dependence. Then the internet arrived. 1980s and 90s. Fiber optic cables, exponentially higher capacity, lower costs. Private companies started laying cables, tech giants, telecom corporations, investment consortiums. The infrastructure privatized rapidly, but the routes didn't change. Cables still crossed at the same ocean choke points: Red Sea, Suez, Malacca, Singapore, because geography constrains everything. You can't run a cable through mountains. You can't avoid narrow straits. Physics hasn't changed since 1858. By 2000, over 300 undersea cables existed. By 2020, over 500, crisscrossing every ocean, connecting every continent, carrying 95% of international internet traffic. Satellites handle less than 1%. 1%. The internet is not wireless. It is overwhelmingly wired. And those wires pass through predictable, mappable, cuttable locations. This creates catastrophic risk, because you don't need to cut all 500 cables. You need to cut the dozen at choke points. The Red Sea is one. Cables from Europe to Asia pass through it. Avoiding the longer route around Africa saves thousands of miles, saves millions in operating costs. So companies cluster cables there, efficiency over redundancy. In 2023, 4 cables broke, traffic dropped but rerouted. The system survived, barely, because other cables absorbed the load. But those other cables are now operating at capacity. One more disruption and rerouting becomes impossible. Singapore is another choke point. Cables connecting East Asia to Europe and the Middle East pass through, Indonesia to Australia, Japan to India, all converging at a single landing point. If Singapore's cables fail simultaneously, Asian internet fragments. Markets lose coordination. Trading between Tokyo and London stops. Payment systems between Seoul and Frankfurt freeze. The entire structure of Pacific Atlantic finance depends on cables passing through one city-state. The vulnerability is measurable. Singapore handles over 40% of Asia-Pacific internet traffic. 40%. Through cables that land at a dozen beach sites, protected by nothing, accessible to anyone with a boat and basic tools. In 2024, a construction accident in Singapore severed 2 cables. Internet speeds across Southeast Asia dropped 30% for weeks. Stock exchanges reported slower trade execution. Banks experienced payment delays. That was accidental damage. 2 cables. Imagine deliberate targeting. 10 cables, 20. The entire regional internet would collapse, and with it, every financial system depending on Asian market data. And those cables are absurdly vulnerable. They lie exposed on the ocean floor, marked on public maps. Depths range from shallow to deep, but many are accessible. A ship dragging anchor can sever them. An earthquake can snap them. A submarine with tools can destroy them deliberately. Repairs take weeks. Specialized ships, slow travel to remote locations. During repairs, that cable is dead. High-frequency trading firms understand this viscerally. They spend millions building private cables, shaving milliseconds off New York to London routes, because milliseconds equal millions in competitive advantage. In 2012, Hibernia Express launched 5 milliseconds faster than competitors. Trading firms paid premium rates. Why? Because faster data means better prices. The entire industry exists because cables enable speed. Now imagine those cables breaking, not one, not accidentally, but multiple, deliberately, in coordinated attacks. This isn't hypothetical. In 2022, Nord Stream pipelines exploded in the Baltic Sea. Underwater infrastructure destroyed, culprits still disputed. But the capability was demonstrated. Pipelines can be targeted. So can cables. Both are submerged. Both are strategic. Both are undefended. China has been mapping undersea cables for years. Research vessels, detailed surveys, publicly documented. They know where every cable runs. Depth, vulnerabilities, repair schedules. This isn't paranoia. It's preparation. In a conflict, cutting enemy communications is basic strategy. Cables are obvious targets, and they're impossible to defend. You can't patrol thousands of miles of ocean floor. The Taiwan Strait is the flashpoint. Taiwan produces 90% of advanced semiconductors, but Taiwan also sits at a critical cable junction. Cables connecting Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific pass through Taiwanese waters. If conflict erupts, those cables become leverage. Sever them, and you don't just isolate Taiwan. You fragment Asian internet. Financial markets lose real-time pricing. Payment systems can't verify transactions. The ripple effects cascade globally. War games have modeled this scenario. Cut 15 cables around Taiwan. Asian stock markets can't coordinate with Western exchanges. Price arbitrage becomes impossible. Algorithmic trading breaks completely. Liquidity evaporates because traders can't verify counterparty positions. Within hours, circuit breakers trigger globally, not from panic, from infrastructure failure. Markets aren't crashing. They're disconnecting. And disconnection is worse than volatility. You can trade through volatility. You can't trade through severed cables. And this reveals the system's core vulnerability. Finance assumes infrastructure stability, assumes data flows continuously, assumes markets stay connected. These assumptions hold until they don't. And when they don't, repricing is violent. Because markets aren't pricing cable risk, they're ignoring it, treating undersea infrastructure as invisible, permanent, guaranteed. It's none of those. Every pension fund, every sovereign wealth fund, every retirement account, exposed to infrastructure they don't know exists, running through waters they can't protect, controlled by geography they can't change. If this changed how you see the internet, share it. Because the entire global economy runs on glass threads lying unprotected on the ocean floor, passing through the same narrow straits that controlled spice routes and oil shipments. Geography hasn't evolved. Technology has, but technology still has to cross geography. And when geography becomes contested, the cables break. And when the cables break, everything stops.